would like to begin by acknowledging the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. I'd also like to acknowledge that the University of Washington Board of Regents govern and steward the university. And we have a member of the Board of Regents joining us this evening, so thank you, Regent Tamaki, for being here. So I'd just also like to welcome everyone for joining us. We have members from the community, we have UW faculty, staff, students, administrators, alumni, joining us both in person and via live stream. And we're just so thrilled to be able to host this Louder Than Words series here at the Othello UW Commons. And for those of you not as familiar, the Commons is both a physical space and it's also a place-based initiative that's really building on the University of Washington's longstanding engagement and commitment to the greater Southeast Seattle communities. And we opened our doors back in January of 2019 to be a venue, a learning space for community partners, UW faculty, staff, and students. And our whole vision for the Othello UW Commons is that the UW is a valuable, a present, and a long-term partner with communities in advancing equity in education, health, and opportunities here in Southeast Seattle. So that's why the Commons has been really intentionally designed to be a catalyst, a learning space, an entry point, and a collaboration opportunity, a convening tool between the UW and greater Seattle communities. While we did have to close this facility during the pandemic, we are just so thrilled and excited that we can reopen and reactivate this space with all of you and to launch this Louder Than Words series. So I'd like to now introduce the Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduate Academic Affairs, Ed Taylor, who's going to tell us more about the purpose of this series. So thank you.
Thank you, Fran. And thank you all for coming. And indeed, we, Sally Clark, myself, and our colleagues thought about when would be the timing, when is the timing right to open the doors to the community and begin a conversation. And a conversation aimed specifically at the well-being of our community as we've moved through this pandemic and we've moved through this last couple of years that have really been traumatic and difficult for so many. So we decided let's have a series of conversations that would be louder than words, that lead us to some form of action. So this is the first in a number of conversations that will begin with community and partnership with community. So we're here to be in community and in partnership with community, not just proximate to community, but to be together in this work. We're here to engage in the humble work of living and thriving and making our community better, a community that we're all proud of, a community that represents who we are and who we want to be. We are here because we believe in the commons and that which brings us together in common. So what better way to start a conversation than to invite Ben Danielson and Sally Clark to be in conversation with one another. And you have access to their bios, so I won't read them. Ben will be leading a new initiative at the University of Washington in the School of Medicine, Allies in Healthier Systems for Health and Abundance, a youth program informed by the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Washington. And Ben is renowned in this community. Brian Stevenson says the true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. If you know anything about Ben, you know he's a man of tremendous character and leadership. Sally Clark, who served in the City Council and serves as Director of Regional and Community Relations at the University of Washington, and she's been doing that since 2015. Sally is also someone who has tremendous credibility in this community because she lives here and because she's worked here. A song that comes to mind when I think about Sally, Sly Stone's Everyday People, the butcher, the baker. Stone's song is about coming together and connecting and getting people on the train together. Everyday people. Sally and Ben are everyday people. Let's begin our conversation with Ben and Sally.
Thank you very much, Ed. I was really worried where that was going with the song thing. Were you frightened?
I had a lot of songs in my head.
I know. Wow. Dr. Ben, thank you for doing this tonight. You said yes. Yeah.
I'm so glad to be able to participate in this. This is such such an important idea, and I'm just honored to be here. And I kind of want to be Ed Taylor when I grow up, so
Nice.
it all fits. Yeah.
That makes him sound very old, too. So yeah, we're going to talk here a little bit. I'm going to glance at my watch every once in a while, but not because I want to be anyplace else, but because part of my job here is to make sure that we use this hour together well. This hour, my greatest fear is that this hour flies by and that I walk out of here thinking, oh my God, I wish we had talked about the important things. So some of that is going to come from all of you who are here in the room, and some of it will come from those of you who are watching this with the live stream and with the questions that we'll add in as we have our conversation. Ed mentioned what I think will be the main thing that I want to ask you about here, but first I'm just going to ask you just kind of the warm-up thing about what's your pandemic life day looked like. You've been in the headlines a little bit more during the pandemic, and I'm sure there'll be some questions about that. I don't know that we're going to spend that much time on that, but what's your pandemic day look like?
Such a great question. I was thinking just now that we all need to start counting small victories on days like this, just little accomplishments, and sitting down and being in this space and the way I'm positioned. I was just really glad I had 2 socks that matched. And I think we just have to measure ourselves in different ways and just have goals that help us to feel like we're getting through days. I think I have learned so much about community, even during this time when we've been so separate from each other. I've been so humbled, so deeply, deeply humbled by the kind of support that I've seen community bring to bear for some of the important issues we're all facing right now, and that have partly gotten me a little more on the news and things like that. Yeah.
And that of course is your much talked about departure from Children's. I'll note we are one of the things that you've also been associated with, though, and going back to those victories, is at some point soon this new Odessa Brown Clinic will open across the street here. That's a tremendous benefit for the community, something you were deeply involved with, and I have to imagine is a great thing for us to celebrate and look forward to connecting with.
It is wonderful.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. It's you know, this is part of being present in community and showing up and really making a stake, making an investment here. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad for everyone who gets to work there and all the families who get to go there.
So let's talk about the pivot, though. So you left, and did you know what you were going to do at that point, or you had? So as we talk about the new project, I guess part of what I want to know is how long have you been thinking about that new project? How has it come to take shape in the way that it was announced just a few days ago, the Ashe project, and I'll ask you to describe it better, but where did it come from? What's the genesis? How has it come together?
Those kinds of ideas percolate for a long time in anyone's brain or in their heart or somewhere in between. I think that I will say again and again, I'm perhaps the least, in terms of expertise, someone who should be speaking with authority about the incredible work that communities have been doing to try to reform juvenile justice systems, the work that people within the juvenile justice system have been trying to do. But it has been a condition and an issue that has been also close to me. It's hard not to work in a clinic where you see brilliant, beautiful, amazing, especially Black and brown young people coming through the door every day, and all you can see in their eyes is potential, like unlimited potential. And to know that we have systems that rob them of that potential sequentially from the earliest days on through these horrible events like youth incarceration, those are things that you sit with and think about for forever if you're awake during your career time. And there are people in this room and across this community who've been teaching me about the deep injustice that our carceral system holds for everyone, but particularly the enslavement that it represents for Black communities across this country, and the deepest crime of taking potential away from young people, robbing all of us of the benefit of the gifts that they could bring.
So you could see, I'm hearing that clearly that you see that potential, but then everything that we read about, everything that we see as some of those kids develop the systems that impact them. And so as a pediatrician, you see that.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking, what am I doing next? And are you still a practicing pediatrician? Are you still seeing kids?
I haven't practiced in a while now,
Yeah.
and I miss
Yeah.
some kids, something fierce. But I also stay connected to a lot of families and things like that.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, you can't be in primary care and walk around talking about prevention and saying that you understand the social determinants and the root causes and the trauma and the adverse childhood experiences. You can't talk about that and try to practice medicine or pediatrics without saying, wow, we have to get on board with something different.
Yep.
We have to be a little more brazen in what we demand of ourselves and of the people around us. We have to expect something more. And we can't wait. We're the ones that we've probably been waiting for. We're the ones that we expect to step into this space. We're the ones that have been making these messes. It's time to get a broom out.
So Ed did the I'll do Ashe again. So Allies in Healthier Systems for Health and Abundance in Youth.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
It's percolation of thought. I will say that Ashe is just an important expression in a lot of communities, including the ones I hold dear. Ashe is a place that brings you onto a common page and a common theme and lets you express a sense of connectedness to each other, to the person who put a phrase into the universe, and for the people who get to receive that. Ashe, the acronym, was also really intentional because it leads with allies. Again, there are so many people doing important work all over our communities, all over our campuses, all over our systems, who really want to see something different. And their efforts are the kinds of things that I want to uplift. Healthier systems, because I've been party to too many efforts that I guess with such a focus on the people in communities exposed to systems, we end up sometimes making it seem like they are the cause of their own unhappiness or sadness or lack of opportunity. And it really is about systems. And we really do deserve healthier systems. So I guess I wanted to lift that as a front and central component. We are not talking about broken people. We're not talking about blaming people. We're talking about really perfectly designed systems to harm, erase, set aside, and yes, kill people in this country, especially BIPOC folks and those who have interconnections to that population, to those groups. So healthier systems for health and abundance in youth. And I think the idea that I guess I wanted to say that it's, as a pediatrician, as somebody who thinks about the public health focus in the way that we relate to issues even like juvenile incarceration, who thinks about the ways in which we are all connected across communities, that this is a health issue in the same way that anything else that affects our lives is a health issue, and that finally that this is about abundance, not about just eliminating something horrendous and horrible and terrible that robs us, I think, of our own dignity, let alone robs other people of theirs, but also that that there's a sense of something better and positive and iterative and creative and reimagining that's about abundance and joy and creating something, not just trying to take a hacksaw to something that's already ugly and bad. Did I drift from your question? Or was that
No, you take us to like a whole nother conversation about people who think that people are essentially good and people who think that people are essentially flawed, and that's for another night. But wow, that you've got me thinking about what our spring programs, spring programs might tackle. So I've got a couple of the other things that have been said about Ashe so far, and then I'm going to ask how you're going to do all this. So, and I know that it's not just you, so I'm being a little provocative there, but promote paths to opportunity that are youth-centered, community-informed, and evidence-based. Focus on communities historically most impacted by youth incarceration. promote solutions, new programs, and policy changes centered on the health and well-being of children, youth, families, and communities. And then wrapped, kind of, I don't know that this is, you should tell me, is this the thing that is the umbrella over all of it, or is it a component of it? Because youth incarceration comes up pretty heavily in this. So the idea that with ASHE and with the allies, that we can end youth incarceration in Washington State by 2030, which is both huge because it's Washington State, and 2030 feels both too late and too soon, given what there is to do. And I'll note, that King County has the goal of ending youth incarceration, at least in the conversation we've been having about the Alder facility, by 2025?
Correct.
How much is this about youth incarceration, or how do you conceive of it so far? And I know that it's been about 72 hours since people have known about this project, so this could evolve and change. But what's your thinking about that?
My thinking is a little bit coming from a time of deep personal reflection that probably was furrowing my brow pretty deeply is exactly a year ago now. And from a sense of I am impatient and I am intolerant in ways that I should probably just be honest about. I am intolerant of continuing to do things that we absolutely know are the wrong things to do, and I am impatient with myself for the bargains and the compromises I've probably made over whatever career I've had, with some sense of trying to get something else good to happen. But I am impatient with all of us. I'm impatient with you and all of you to sit and tolerate systems that we know are not doing anyone any good. I'm impatient. And from that, I guess I see this work that I did a tiny part of, but many other people did all of the work of really compelling this county to make a dedication to end youth incarceration by the year 2025. I see that actually as this very, very downstream, very, very late kind of thing to be focusing on. But it is a date, and it is a system, and it is an event, and it is something that we can call to and look to and know that that it is wrong. And in order to undo the things that are wrong in our society, we don't just talk about it and they happen. We don't just have a simple checklist. I won't be able to answer all of your questions right, because we won't know exactly what we will be doing 6 months or a year from now. I would challenge any of you to know those things. I hope you don't, because then life would be kind of... So the work kind of lays itself out in front of you. It's funny for me as a very upstream, let's get to the roots, whatever analogy you want to get to that's talking about where's all of the cause that's happening here. This is very downstream thinking for me. So I had to put my head into that. But it is such a signature and important cause. And it is such a moment of degradation that I think that it helps us to focus ourselves around some important ideas. One, that our whole system of incarceration is really so harmful and terrible, and any on-ramping to that is something we should be fighting with all of our muster. But two, all the things that we care about, and I'll say we to anybody who would be hearing or listening or watching, all the things we care about are so much more interconnected than we tend to pretend they are. I've done all my work to silo myself in some age range of medical specialty, which is kind of a joke in itself. You could tease me for that. I've done all my work to sort of learn a lot of words that are really bad mashups of Latin and Greek in order to sound smart in front of other people. We've all done our work to maybe feel like we're better at something, but maybe sometimes also isolating ourselves from the ways in which we were all interconnected. And I just kept learning that when you start talking about the ways we are connected, when we start reaching out and having conversation with people with which you would not be prone to in your professional career or in your inklings, in your guidance, when you start to want to listen to someone else and hear in them the same struggles that you feel inside yourself, or the same hope or the same joy, you start to do things differently, and you start to get impatient, and you start to think about things differently. So all of that starts to build up for you. And it makes me think that, yes, we have to do a lot of very concrete work in order to make this a county that can be a county without youth incarceration. We actually owe our communities a lot of investment and work in order to make that happen. And hey, when we start doing that, we actually start to invest in the ways that I would bet if I were having beer and wine with any of you who drink beer and wine, because I do, we'd be talking about those are the things that we should be doing anyway. This is our opportunity. I don't know, sometimes you have to take the chance to actually take an opportunity to do what you already knew was right.
And a couple of things related to that. You know, there's also, this is terrible shorthand, but the Cairo, you know, listener question comes up about no detention ever. You know, and I can't imagine that you won't have that, because I think, you know, on the one, I hear you saying, you know, when you start having a conversation with people about what's our vision for our communities, what's our vision for our children's success, for our families' success, I just can't imagine there's that much disagreement. Whether you're in Seattle, in Southeast Seattle here in Othello, whether you're over in Sequim or Port Angeles or over in Spokane, and then you get people who do pull back a little bit and say, wait a minute, no detention ever? What are you talking about? And I feel like we get trapped in that conversation.
Right.
How do you get out of that conversation? And you may not know yet.
I don't know that I do. I think it's important to have that conversation, and I think it's important to welcome that conversation. The biggest mistake we could make would be to cut off someone's concerned perspective who is showing enough interest in it to have an opinion to want to say something. So that's important. I don't think I'll be able to put this into proper words, so I'll just apologize ahead of time.
Good thing we're live streaming.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if we even have the right to ask some of these questions in a way, and I don't mean to degrade the questions themselves, but like, if we are doing so much abject harm to other human beings ourselves, if we're systematically doing that, if we're costing our society precious resources, if we're ambivalent about it and we talk about we don't like youth detention, but we're building brand new youth detention facilities, if we are trapped in these spirals of just left foot going one way, right foot going the other until our groins are sore, if we are like harming so abjectly, it can't be that we would just give up on and changing things because of a question, no detention ever. So I think there's almost a moral, we've sort of lost the privilege, the right to judge in that frame, in that way, when we're talking about our existing system. I think there are really valid questions about what does it mean to face consequences as a young person, to be responsible for your actions to the extent that your brain and your development and your mind and the experiences around you and the decision making that could be really wise based on things around you lead you into spaces and places that we've called criminal or at least transgressions. I think it's very, very valid to say that people who've been harmed cannot have the harm that's been done to their families negated or erased or said we don't care about that anymore. That's absolutely not right. I think that my hope in youth is born out of a sense that we traverse the decisions we make, the hardships we have, the things that don't go right, the hard and terrible things that we do. We traverse those in order to be someone who is helping society, who's a better part of a beloved community, who's supporting things. I think a question has to be somewhere in that. I will talk to you about are we talking no detention ever, but as long as you'll talk to me about what do you hope to see? Do you hope to see a world where we actually are able to be upstream and prevent some of the violence that you were saying you abhor? do we hope to have a world where young people are recognized for their redeemability, their amazing redeemability, or do we want to write people off? And somewhere in there has to be an answer that helps us traverse this question of no detention ever.
So taking it into another direction, as far as the upstream work, that seems, I don't mean endless, I guess I mean it's almost unconstrained in terms of the things that are failing many of our communities, whether it is affordability of housing, truly a living wage, and that's just to start, quality pay for teachers, quality pay for childcare. It's almost like, where do you draw a boundary, or do you need to draw a boundary, and does that give you incredible flexibility to get to try to gain allies and exert influence in those arenas?
Yeah, I mean, how do we define abundance?
Right.
Just in the frame of that conversation, I think is really interesting. But these, these experiences that sometimes you learn from and sometimes you have to percolate on. I learned a lot about the development of this medical legal partnership program. I got to be part of starting that among many other brilliant people, like 2008 with the Robert Wood Johnson grant to sort of get it started. And there are all these revelations that have instantly came out of that. I started actually asking families a little bit more about like what keeps you up at night, and also what do you love about your family. And in the what keeps you up at night, I know that our clinic and other clinics like Harborview have always been really focused on supporting families' needs, but I don't know that we were asking the question in the same way.
Yeah.
So this is 13 years ago, but starting to ask that very intentionally, was suddenly getting all of these answers that had these civil legal components to them. You'd ask it 200 times, and 96% of the time there would be at least one, and the average was close to 6. And so suddenly I'm sitting in my super cool doctor's office thinking, wow, when I'm here blathering on about the importance of healthy nutrition and how to like safely cross the street, whatever it is, I think is super important, and maybe it is important on some level. A grandmother, a mother, a grandfather, a father is worried about 6 other things that they won't sleep well that night about. And how can I place my sense of priority about what's important for their child above theirs? And so uncommon partnerships, the idea of lawyers and medical people starting to come together, whole different way of actually suddenly regarding the same families and patients that you were always seeing before. So something's kind of cool about that, something pretty boundless, almost abundant about that. Then when you start to work with these other professionals, these civil legal experts, you suddenly realize also that there's so many more things that you could do that could be more positive, and they don't involve super resource or reinventing something amazing. It just involved kind of being there and having a little bit of knowledge. And so suddenly I used to talk to families about how to make sure their kid with asthma isn't going to get kicked out of their Section 8 housing and turn into a homeless child, an unhoused child with asthma. And I would write these really flowery letters to a landlord and please, oh please, and maybe I'd quote W.E.B. Du Bois or something and try to get really deep about that. And then started working with these lawyers, and they were like, this is the code you quote. Yeah. This is how you write this letter. This is what your expectations are. And suddenly I'm a better doctor. Yeah. Yeah. And so I start to think about if I had said that's not the realm of law for them to be in the space of medicine, or it's not the realm of medicine to be verging into the space of law, I just wonder how limiting that is for all of us. So I would love to just spend time talking with people who do things completely differently, and also ask them if what you said is true, that we all agree that youth incarceration is a crime, is its own bad thing. I would love to have conversations with people who do things in very different ways about how they feel about that and how they might think about addressing it. These are really long answers. I'll try to get shorter.
Yeah, because these are
Straight
such
up.
easy, soundbitey,
Yeah.
straight up stuff. I was thinking that I really want to be a fly on the wall in some of your conversations, trying to figure out who does agree that youth incarceration is criminal, and because you're going to have fascinating conversations around the state, trying to figure out where those common values sit, and then how to work from those. And I don't know. I end up being a believer that they're there,
For sure.
but the language, the setting, all of that.
Yeah,
How is it
not to
gonna
sound too
happen?
much like Will Rogers, but I don't think, for most of the things that I've seen so far in my life, I don't think we almost ever have a lack of solutions. And I challenge myself when saying I think we usually have a lack of will.
I think the system thinks it has lots of solutions. And then getting to that point where you
Yeah.
figure out, how do you get people to say, oh yeah, you know what? That person might be right. I wonder if we should be questioning this. That's such a combination of what is the right moment, who are the right people, who is the right speaker. And there's always this combination of, you hear it a lot in politics and in policy making, of, is that issue ripe yet? And yet that's so complicated about, to your point, like,
Well, maybe.
it's been ripe,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
maybe not to the people who
Right.
are signing the budget or passing the policy.
We have a deadline now.
Yeah.
And back to your, this universe, ever expanding universe, what an amazing thing it is to be at a mind expanding university that really has so many incredibly talented people. And I am not pandering in front of a W here. I'm really serious that there is an amazing host of knowledge and talent and thought and passion who, again, often have very similar thoughts about our systems. And I don't know if it's fully accurate or not, because I've not been as ensconced in the university world as others, but it feels a little bit siloed sometimes. It feels like sometimes the efforts are magnificent, but often even only speak to the realm with which they are in. And I think there's lots of folks who would love to just be in uncommon spaces
Oh, yeah.
and having uncommon conversations and thinking about how to do things that bridge. I think that there are topics that could pull our university together in such interesting ways. What if the shared theme, we've had common books, we talked about
Yeah.
that. What if the common theme was ending youth incarceration? Or maybe even better, what if it was an abundant theme? Like,
Yeah.
what is the world that you want for youth? And you took your specialty, your space, your area of expertise, and we spent time talking about that. That feels really interesting to me.
Yeah, I should note, I'm certainly one of those people who, and we all are to some extent, guilty of was the issue ripe yet? There are plenty of those that I can look back on, and this question of the university seems kind of siloed. So having worked in local
you
government,
can correct me about that.
having worked in local government, which a lot of people say, boy, that's pretty siloed. You guys don't seem to be able to work together.
Yeah.
Then you come to the university and you're like, oh, that's siloed. Oh, and that's another night, right? Grew out of these 1600s Europe models of complete autonomy, and no one tells us. And now they're all fiefdoms. And my analogy for University of Washington, which we can talk about over beers or wine sometime, is that it's Spain with the individual republics and all the.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, back to the more important subject, and then it'll be good to take a couple of questions if we have any of those that are coming in. I want to just acknowledge, we have a relatively small group that's in the crowd with us today. And I'll note, Dr. Danielson and I have taken off our masks for the streaming audience. Everybody else here is masked. We don't have a ton of young people in the room with us, and we talked before this about just wanting to acknowledge that. This is a relatively small
Yeah.
crowd. Your project, though, is predicated on conversations that not just involve youth, but are driven by youth.
The expertise of youth.
That the expertise and the solutions
Yeah.
have to be based in
Yeah.
a driving voice and action from youth.
Yeah.
Do you know yet what that means for the project?
Well, I think that even that is ever expanding for me. I was just having a really sad and powerful and maybe enriching conversations with folks who work at the inpatient psychiatric unit at Children's just a couple of hours ago. We were just talking about the interconnections there between social determinants, mental health, final common pathways into that inpatient psychiatric unit in a very similar model. It is almost its own incarceration, but it is also sometimes this alternative to de facto incarceration, or it's a step between. It's an amazing set of conversations when you start talking about things like that. We were also talking about that is also a space that could really benefit from having youth advising and thinking and talking about what it's like to be in an IPU, inpatient psychiatric unit. And I think this idea of lifting up youth engagement in each space of those many different unusual conversations that you have is a really powerful one. I will also say, and I think there are people in this audience and others who could say this better than me, but we grown-ups have been really crappy at talking with youth and including them in processes. Just done a terrible, and we have a very check-the-box kind of approach to it now, and I think it's performative. I think it needs its own body of work. I think there are actually some people who have a lot to teach about how to do that better, and I hope to be engaging in trying to support the process of all of us having youth involved in our decision making in a way that's different, organizationally at least, if not in other ways. I think we have a lot to learn about how to do that well, and so I want to also be on a journey of learning how to do that well.
Does there ever, and this is another one where this could be a cheap oppositional that is completely false, but in nonprofit world, I think you sometimes end up with attention in, not that yours is a standard nonprofit because you're a center within the university, but there's some similarities to this. So in nonprofit world, I think you sometimes get attention where somebody will say, well, we want there to be youth voices, we want new innovative ideas, we want to try new things. Oh, and we also need it to be evidence-based. We need it to already be tested and approved and okayed before we'll actually do it.
Oh, by the way, that hurts Black people too.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it has all of these trickle-down issues. How does that get addressed? And or is there a way that that ASHE might be able to approach that differently?
Many ways. Again, one thing we have another bounty of in King County especially is just amazing brilliance and people who think differently with depth and creativity and thought and deeply informed by culture and heritage and elders. And so I think we need only look as far as the work that people like Abigail Echohawk do to really both decolonize all of the ideas we have around data and information, reclaim it as owned by the people and not by the person who needs it for their CV. I'm sorry, and also create different ways of understanding what knowledge and wisdom can look like. And again, I'm not sure that we have a lack of solutions in that space. I don't know if we've listened to the brilliance around us all the time about how to do that better.
Okay,
Am I answering any question? I feel like it's
I don't know. I think he's doing pretty well.
a slicing kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jodine. Okay, going to give handwriting a try here. All right. Oh, great question. And this gives me an opportunity to do a shout out to another group also. So this is regarding potential allies. And will you be working with community passageways with ASHE? What organizations in South Seattle will you be working with? For instance, Somali Health Board, East African Community Health Services. And I wanted to note, we know Choose 180 is also an active partner in the greater South Seattle area. They have a big event tonight. We are unfortunately having this at the same time as a number of different events, but Choose 180 does pretty awesome work. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out. And we know that we're on the same night that they're doing their fall event. So.
Yeah, yes to all of that. And the only reframe I would say is the question is, will they be willing to work with me, right? This is really about their expertise, their skill, their talent, and the hard work that they've been doing forever. So I hope to have the privilege of getting to work with those organizations and more. There is an amazing wealth of talent and caring and passion and delivery of doing something hard and better in this county. It's really incredible.
And those were three pretty great organizations as well. And then
Yeah.
I can't imagine you're not going to get reached out to by a number of folks around in different parts of the state as well. And figuring out how to maybe spread yourself way too thin is going to be part of your challenge, I would imagine.
You speak that as if perhaps your life has been one of
You can spend every morning and every night. Yeah.
There are also, I hope that there are lessons that we continue to carry from this COVID time. And I'll just mention really quickly, like there's been a COVID collaborative of folks from around the state, of organizations that are working directly in communities in many different ways, from the unhoused to youth with mental health needs, to LGBTQIA+, to Latino and migrant farm worker community, like incredible, 600 different entities that come together in this collaborative to talk about the COVID response. And for all of the horrible things that we go through right now, I just hope we lift up as many of the, let's keep that kind of nugget as we can. And I really hope that that becomes a forever group of people who come together and talk. Like, it is talk again about uncommon partners getting together. It is a joy to watch those folks convene and talk about how they're doing it right, what we need to learn, what's hard, what's challenging, what's heartbreaking, what's beautiful, and they lift each other up. It's just really, really powerful.
You know, I realized I didn't ask kind of a basic question. So when ASHE has the goal of ending youth incarceration in Washington State by 2030, I guess there's a big partner there that I should ask if they're on board with that goal, or will they take convincing? And I guess that's the state of Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. Do I even have a right to make that kind of a statement? I don't even know. I think I would love to know if there are folks in the state that would share a goal like that. And if not, what is their goal? And if not, what do they believe? I'm just kidding. I think those are conversations that we need to have. We have this deadline for King County that can either show what's possible or could be something that would really scare a lot of other places. We've done incredible work with zero youth detention to bring the census of youth in the carceral systems down from, 60s and 80s several years ago.
Yeah.
Yesterday's count was 19. And so there's every reason why we ought to be able to do this. It sounds kind of weird and out there and enormous, and yet there's every reason, and I don't want to do that old, like, if we can't do it here, we can't do it anywhere, but there's every reason why we should be able to accomplish this in this county and show other spaces what's possible.
We'll talk more about that one. That's good. So, question about Seattle Public Schools. How will the program, do you know yet how the program will work with Seattle Public Schools or other districts around the state to break the school to prison pipeline, where it begins? That one's from school board candidate Michelle Sarju.
I will be asking Michelle Sarju what that could look like. But I also will say, it's been wonderful to find eager early partners in this work. And one of the most eager, earliest partner has been Gail Joseph at the university, who's really, her focus is early learning. And I think she sees the value of a partnership that's really rich. And I think for me, if we really solidify a relationship to early learning and ending youth incarceration and creating possibilities, then all the other dots have to fall. Like, you can't not get connected if that's going to be there in a strong way. But I think the relationship to schools and communities is really important and vital and has to be strengthened. There was a survey that Michelle would know better than me that just came out about how youth are doing during COVID-19. Among high schoolers, 57.7% of high schoolers are feeling depressed or sad on just about every day for the past year. Now, we're talking about ending youth incarceration, but we know the connection to mental health unmet needs, and we know the escalation of those needs in this past time. If we can't start talking about solving that kind of challenge, then we are not worthy of calling ourselves a society.
So that was a great shout out for Gail Joseph, and for those who don't know, she's in the university's College of Education, specialized early learning. Great,
and she's awesome.
Great rock star. And I go to my my Evans School training, and I'm like, oh my God, Dr. Ben is going to need a dashboard. He's going to need metrics. to know how are we going to get to that 2030 elimination of youth incarceration.
Yeah, been talking with IHME and
Really? Cool.
Folks there. Had a conversation today, and Ali Muqdad.
Yeah, Ali Muqdad. Yeah.
And really, he's like excited because he really wants to bring some bridging themes for the university
Oh, that's cool.
that stimulate ideas, and he is all about databases and
This is really, I think, for President Kelsey, I have to imagine that has to really land in the population health initiative for the university, the race and social equity pillar for the university. So I imagine it attracts a lot of faculty.
And I have a dream. I just want to say,
Yeah.
and this is either a stupid dream or it's just a obvious thing, but I want to be part of a university as a state entity that actually names and claims that it cares about every young person in the state, regardless of whether or not they are a UW student or ever will be a UW student. I want a state university to have this kind of commitment to every young person in this state, that wherever you go, wherever you want to go, we are going to support that path. We are going to care about that path. And I believe this work is one way to demonstrate that in a very, very clear way. I want someone to declare that this university cares about every young person, not just the ones who will eventually be purple and gold. And I think that would be really amazing. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? But isn't that also like an obligation that maybe a state university should kind of aspire to? I'll bet that's an idea. Anyway, yeah.
So this might be the question that I should have asked before you said that. Okay. In regards to ASHE, how do you ensure it stays community-oriented and community-centered when funding comes from sources, I think it says outside community,
Yeah.
and is housed in a white institution, in a predominantly, if not all, white institution?
I envision a double identity for this work. One big main piece working within the university, but also a piece connected, hopefully, to the Tubman Center in community.
Huh.
And that I care very deeply about the importance of really remaining community-centered and really focused and listening and listening and listening and being led by and driven by community voice. And I hope to surround myself with people who would kick me in the butt if we were not heading in that direction consistently. But that is a great question. There is always the challenge, and the funding always invites you to compromise something. That is the struggle that we will always have. And I will not be like starry-eyed about whether or not that's something we have to face up to.
The great news is I think that there are plenty of people willing to kick you on the butt.
Yeah.
So this might be one of them. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to try to read this one pretty verbatim. So Ben, thanks for your work. This question pushes deeper into allyship with white audiences. How do we build bridges to the movable middle, those open to progressive ideas but deeply uncomfortable with accepting their own racism? Please share your thoughts on calling in and not calling out.
I very much value the concept of calling in. I'll also be honest and say I am impatient, and I not only ask, but I expect that every one of us has our personal work to do. I house and hold my biases. I've ingested enough racism to be at risk for behaving that way. I have my own lots of challenges, and I know our white communities have a lot of their own reckoning yet to do.
Oh yeah.
And I expect that to happen. And I don't think, I think that is the question to them. And I also think that it is time for us to ask for demonstrations of good faith in those directions. So I would love for that to be a standard that we hold each other to around that. I think that it is hard for people to recognize, come to terms with, and address the many different layers of racism that have seeped into all of our lives. It is hard to get away from, and let me tell you, not that long ago, I was very much part of an organization that practices racism by talking about equity. I know all of the games and all of the tools that people and organizations use in order to try to distract, defray, move the conversation somewhere else, hold on to power, and maintain their positions wherever they are, whatever they value. That is hard work that we all have to face up to, and we have to look for every opportunity to do our best in those spaces.
I've got a question here that I can sort of make heads or tails out of, but I'm gonna try it. So, if you could invite 2 to 3 people to come sit in your chair, or in this, does it mean in your chair in this conversation?
This chair?
This. Is it a question about allies? Who are the 2 to 3 who you would immediately invite? I'm looking for feedback. Nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
Should a young person who's experienced the juvenile justice system or been in a community where that feels like that could be a reality be in this chair? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should be talking to the folks with the greatest experience and wisdom and knowledge in this space. Yes. So it's not just about maybe me creating spaces for youth to advise a project and work like this, but it's for you to also be inviting youth to be sitting here, if that's the question.
How, as you've been putting this project together, and as this project has had feedback from people, and as you see it rolling out, are there ways that the pandemic, how does the pandemic overlay? Are there ways that the pandemic has changed maybe how this project, maybe you thought it might look, or taken from it, improved it? What?
I'll confide in just you all that
Just keep it here, people.
the idea
Just keeping it here.
of even trying this work, it scares me to death that I'm really trying not to get into conversations that feel like they draw you into a sense of hubris about because there's way too much Americanism about even the way sometimes this work is talked about, right? Somebody is creating a center, and that's going to be, like, center even has this gravitational force to it, and that's going to be doing these things that solve problems elsewhere. We got to stop that. And we need to get into conversations that are just different. And so I actually think in some ways, some of the issues of the COVID and the COVID response, maybe more importantly, the racism's reckoning that we need to continue to do, have really put a lot of things into that kind of focus, for me anyway. I guess I also think that I have a response that I never had before to people who talk about the gravity of the problem, or the who does it and does it not affect. We've halted our whole economy. We've arrested schools. We've stopped the productivity of this country. We've done incredible things to put the brakes on and put everything to a stop, and invested incredibly for a virus that is the smallest iota of an increment in the scale of harm that racism has done in this country over time. We've made that kind of commitment in this past year and a half, and we've all done it. We've all participated in it. Don't anybody ever tell me that we can't make the sacrifices necessary to address issues of racism in this country. Do not tell me that. That is, I almost swore there, and I'm a pediatrician, I don't do that very often.
Yep.
So that's there, yeah.
We are drawing towards the end, so I'll do a last call for questions. But I have a question that sort of overlapped with one of my final questions, which is, what should the people in this, if you could advise the people in this room to be thinking about actions they should be taking, what should we all be doing? And I'll pose it in 2 ways. One is you do have a new center, which everyone will assume is going to solve the whole problem and everything's fine because there's a center now. And I'll also say for anybody not in the university community, like center, I learned immediately when I came to the university, like never say center. It makes makes the fundraising people very nervous.
Right.
They think it's this whole different thing.
Right.
So it's fascinating that you've got center happening in your thing.
Yeah.
But it does signal something to people. So maybe not just about this project, but what should people walk out of here, take away tonight, thinking about doing?
I'm going to preface with a little bit of, there's something about white supremacy that often wants the takeaways, what are the two things that we're supposed to do?
Yep.
And so I won't really do that.
Yep.
But what I will say is that I feel inspired to ask more people to ask themselves hard questions about what you tolerate in your life. And if you really believe something, how will you find the will to actually be part of making a difference? I feel inspired to want to ask people, can we talk sometime? Like, what do you believe about the ways in which we can create a beloved community that believes in the potential of every young person? Every young person. I hope, I'm inspired to hope that people have conversations with folks they would never talk to before just because they wanted to learn something more about themselves in addition to learn something about somebody else. I am so sick of the harm that our isolationism is doing to this country, just as one piece of that. I hope that we can seek to learn about things that gets us beyond the simplest and silliest of questions. We're traversing these spaces. Now, we talk about racism. We need to traverse past but what about all lives matter? We need to get past the strategies of splitting people in order to keep groups from working well together and seeing real change. I invite all of us to ask something more of ourselves, and to do that with a sense of love and joy and hope. And even if it's angry, Michelle and I, we get angry sometimes. We get real angry. But what I know about Michelle and what I hope for myself is that it's love greed. It is always coming from this place of deep, deep love for people around you. If you don't care about people, maybe you don't get angry. But if you care deeply, then it should move you to some kind of action that is so scary to you that you feel like it might actually risk some of the things that you cling the most dearly to. And once you start doing that, I'll bet it changes your perspective about what's possible, what you can do. So I invite that. I invite something broader and deeper and bigger, because I don't want to drift back to anything after this pandemic is gone. I don't want to drift back to accepting and compromising and being complicit in a society that would lock up young people and steal their futures and rob us of their potential. I don't want that. So I'm going to do something. I don't know. What ideas do you have? I would love to talk with you about that.
So I think I'll thank you. And I'll hand this over to Christian in a moment to close us out. And I really appreciate the questions that people handed forward. And I think part of what I think about, and I'll be the white person that goes back to kind of systems again. And there's the saying that we've built the systems that we've wanted. We've built the systems that have worked for certain people in a particular way. We can build systems differently. There is a way to do that, and I think this concept that you've included in the title of abundance being more of the operating principle is pretty great for us. So
I'm going to hold that. Thank you.
Yeah. Christian?
Thank you, Sally. I just want to thank Dr. Ben and Sally for a wonderful evening. Again, my name is Christian Love. I'm the new program manager for the Othello UW Commons. Before we move any further, I would love to acknowledge and thank Regent Barishaw for joining us this evening. Thank you for your time and your support and advocacy. But really appreciate you all for joining us this evening to attend our first Louder Than Words series, both in person and virtually. We hope you were able to listen and engage and learn about some very just innovative and pressing challenges that are facing our communities and region today. Dr. Ben, you shared some very wise wisdom and great questions for us to consider as we think about our will and being love gree, and also thinking about ways in which we can serve as an institution to really care, support, and advocate for all youth in our state. So I appreciate you challenging us to do that today. Tonight's live streaming is made possible by the Undergraduate Academic Affairs and the Office of External Affairs. The Othello UW Commons is made possible by many partnerships across the university and community. If you would like to join our work and get involved, please visit our website and plan to attend future Louder Than Words events. Please also stay connected with the Othello UW Commons by connecting with us on social media. This information can be found on the program handout, and this also the slide for our viewers watching online. This was the first of our 8 monthly conversations we'll be hosting, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you all.